Hi people, it's Sharchivist here, and today I will be playing WildStar. So what is WildStar then? Well, I'm not entirely sure myself, to be honest. I've only been playing the game for roughly an hour. I went through the tutorial mission. It was a bit reminiscent of Champions Online, if you ever played that game. And it's an MMO at its core, obviously. But it seems like it's trying to do a few new things. As with any new MMO, they need to stand out from World of Warcraft, because whenever it comes to an MMO, you just can't help but mention it. It's been prevailing now for going on 10 years. It's got another expansion coming out. I mean, how many games do you ever hear of where they last as long as World of Warcraft has? And actually, I'll start by giving my brief history on MMOs. The first one I ever played was RuneScape. This was a browser-based MMO. It was very simplistic and it had very bad graphics, even back in the days of the PlayStation 2, which is when I was playing it, I should say. Even then, the graphics were considered fairly bad. So that just gives you an idea. I think they've improved it since, but I haven't played it. And I remember thinking to myself, this is such a fun idea, this is such a cool concept, playing with a bunch of other people in a consistent world. I just wish it was a proper game, because it didn't feel like a proper game at all, RuneScape. So I went onto the internet and I searched for what RuneScape was, and I found the term massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And one of the top results was World of Warcraft, and to my dismay it was subscription based, but it looked so good I decided, you know what, I have to do this, I have to go with it, this looks so good. And I started playing it and it was the most amazing experience ever. I remember meeting friends in the Barrens, we went on adventures together. It was back when, because no one really knew what World of Warcraft was, people were exploring and having fun. Now it's become very mechanical, people are all rehearsing everything, no one goes into anything in World of Warcraft without having looked it up first. But back in those days it was all new and fresh and it was a great experience. But it did have one problem with regards to the questing. Basically it was a little non-intuitive. There were certain concepts that I have no problem with. It asked you to figure out where you had to go rather than just telling you. In a game just look here, there's an arrow so you can see where to go, it's very convenient. But in the later levels of World of Warcraft in vanilla, the quests became extremely difficult, you had to travel huge distances to complete them, and I just got tired of it. So I thought, I need to find another MMO because this is just becoming a little tiresome. And I found this game that was coming out, it was being hyped up, called Warhammer Online, and it looked really awesome. So naturally I follow the hype behind it, I get super hyped. I kind of turned against World of Warcraft because I so wanted this game to succeed. And I started playing, and at first it seemed decent, it seemed new and fresh, but after a certain amount of time it just seemed like the same old game, and it wasn't actually as good. It hadn't benefited from the same years of experience, plus it didn't have that Blizzard polish. So sadly I got a little disenfranchised with Warhammer and furthermore MMOs in general. So when they announced other MMOs that were fantasy based, I just ignored them. But then there was another game that looked very similar to this actually, called Champions Online. I played that. That had some really awful latency issues, which funnily enough WildStar hasn't had yet in my experience. But that suffered from the same thing Vanilla WoW did. As you leveled up, it just seemed as if it was getting very, very difficult to complete quests. Not from a true challenge standpoint, it was just getting dull and boring. Nothing was holding my attention really. So I gave up with that pretty fast. And by the way, every time I gave up an MMO I went back to World of Warcraft because it just seemed like the safe familiar thing. And I'm getting a little bit of stuttering here. And then I moved on to, what was it? It was a long time, but I did actually play the Old Republic, and I really didn't rate that too much. The ideas behind it, God, that game had so much hype, but it just, again, in the later levels got boring. I tell you, the problem with that game was also, you could argue one of its greatest strengths was also its greatest weakness, was the fact it kept doing it actually had voices doing the quests. Now that's a really cool idea, I can see why they did it, but they invested so much money into it and forgot everything else, like endgame. I've got to rapidly tap here. They forgot everything else, and also after a while it just got boring listening to all they had to say. It wasn't interesting anymore aside from the main quest. They were all going along the same basic idea. I got very bored with it. So again, went back to World of Warcraft, and I don't think I'd played another MMO besides WoW until I noticed this, and I thought, am I going to get fooled again? Well, you know what, I'm going to go in for the trial part of the game, so I'm not paying a subscription for this as far as I'm aware. I really hope I'm not. Just not because it's a bad game, just because I don't want to gamble again. But so far, it's actually surprised me at how polished it is, because this is coming from a developer I had no idea about. I think they're called Carbine. No idea about this before I actually started playing it. And it's really impressed me so far. The first thing is the fact it's had no technical issues so far. That's just so unheard of. Usually when an MMO comes out, it's awful. Well, I wasn't there for WoW's launch, but that was apparently plagued. Warhammer wasn't too great. Champions Online was absolutely awful, atrocious. But this has been fine so far, and what's more is the game seems to run well. If it was a game running with the equivalent graphics and it wasn't MMO, I'm sure it would run better. But for what it is, it does. I mean, I haven't noticed any massive frame rate drops, aside from a bit of stuttering I noticed just then, but that was a first, and that might have been latency related as opposed to the frame rate, the graphics. You might notice as well the combat is fairly dynamic as well, because rather than me just clicking on an enemy and then just selecting my spell and then it automatically targets for me, it's actually, I have to aim where the spell will go. And while this, I'm not saying it's making the game into an action RPG, it does make it feel a lot more involved. I think, what was it called? Guild Wars. Oh, that's another one I played, Guild Wars 2, but that wasn't subscription based, so I almost don't count that. In fact, I played it for so little time, I almost don't count that. But that was trying to do what I think this game is succeeding in. It was going for that more action-focused combat system, but what it did there was it just made it so you could move with every spell. And I mean, that's the thing about standing still and casting a spell, is it gives it a bit more impact. In theory, it sounds worse, because, you know, why would you want to stand still and cast a spell when you can move around and be dynamic? But as you can see there, I have to make a compromise, right? So do I finish casting my spell and let them attack me, because you can see those red telegraphs are the enemy's attacks, or, you know, do I unleash my damage, or do I get out of the way and preserve my own health? So it's a little bit of tactics there rather than just button mashing. Although I will admit, you know, this game isn't free of button mashing. That still comes into it. I think this is actually, I mean, it's got a good balance from what I can tell so far. It's familiar, yet there are new elements to it, and that's what I think it could succeed. If it's going to fail like so many other MMOs have, it won't be because the game is poorly made. It really won't. It will just be because it's not had enough hype behind it. I know I'm being told it did actually have a good amount of hype, but I mean, think back to games such as the Old Republic. If you recall how much hype that had behind it, it wasn't nearly on that level. I'm just going to check the time, because I don't want this to go over 15 minutes. Okay, 8 minutes, that's not too bad. So I'm still going to be killing these foes. Really like the spells in this game. I have chosen an Esper, which is sort of like a Green Lantern character. As you can see, I'm projecting different, well, projectiles. I'm conjuring them out of nothing. Also, I should keep... I've been killing these guys wildly, but I'm not really paying attention. Okay, so I need to overload the Dominion. Okay, I should focus on destroying those cannons for now, rather than continuously killing. Although it will give me a level advantage just from the general XP you get from killing. What else do I need to do? I've got some explorer-based missions, I think, where I have to go to certain vantage points. It's quite cool how, although this is a snowy zone, they've actually taken the time to give different feels within the zone. So as you can see here, it's a bit dark, there's some greenery around. It's not just one giant snowy ice field. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it as well, but I might have forgotten, but you can dodge as well in this game. That's pretty awesome. That's the way of quickly getting out of the way of enemy telegraphs. Okay, 75%. It's interesting to make it so it denotes how many enemies or items you've gone through, rather than saying, say, 5 out of 1 out of 5, it will say 20%, and so on and so forth. It works with percentages. I'm not sure how to feel about that. Okay, it's not really a big deal, to be honest, actually. I mean, it's basically just the same. It's a way of saying the same thing. You might notice as well, loot. You don't loot corpses in this game, but when enemies die, they drop the loot. They literally drop it. It'll go to the side if they have it. I've noticed enemies also don't have as much loot on them, which is kind of a good thing because you can make it so enemies are just dropping random trash. And I mean, what is the point of trash really, other than to sell it? But they will drop it physically, so you'll see the item go into the environment and then you hit the V button and it will suck it in like a vacuum, which is very reminiscent actually of Ratchet and Clank. The nuts and bolts would magnetize to you there. Holy moly, that's a big Dominion Ultrabot. I will try not to annoy him for now, but I've got a feeling I will have to engage him eventually. Oh wait, actually, oh no, sorry, that's part of the quest. I do have to engage him. Okay, well, he's pretty big, but he's no match for my hovering spectral shuriken type thing. Okay. Time for David to beat Goliath. Okay, let's shift into my spectral form. By disallowing you to move, it kind of takes away all responsibility. Oh, well that was just too easy. I think it might be because I've killed so many monsters rather than completing quests that I've given myself a bit of a level advantage, so that's probably why that went down so fast. Although, the thing about an MMO is you have to be careful not to make the early levels too difficult for two reasons. Number one, you don't want to put people off, and number two, you need to introduce people to the game, because these MMOs, they have a very broad appeal because they can also just appeal to people who want to play a social experience, and if you're being killed over and over again at the beginning and really you just want to play with your friends, that's a little annoying. You want to leave the challenge, the real challenge and coordination for endgame or just the later levels. In World of Warcraft, I've found it tends to be that the game is extremely easy if you're playing an expansion that isn't current. So if you go from vanilla, Cataclysm content, let's just say that from level 1 all the way to the end of Cataclysm, that is extremely easy. I mean, it makes you feel overpowered. Wait 1 second. Okay, I've just noticed the Dominion Ultrabot is actually an event, which makes me think, can I just kill it over and over again? I wonder if these events are like, I've not played Rift, but I've heard a big thing about it was that there were rifts and whole groups could take part in it. And I wonder if that's what this is meant to be, but because there's only one of me, the difficulty has been scaled down. I should check my loot. Oh dear, I've accidentally let my loot table, my bag get filled up. How do I get rid of some of this? Oh, that's cool. That's like that mod for World of Warcraft where all your bags are in one, but it's just the default, which makes sense. Interesting setting this as well, because it's sort of like a western. For example, the mage spell slinger class is like a gunslinger, but it's also set in the future, so I guess that also adds to the Star Wars similarity as well. Actually, I think this would be a good point to end this video now. I'll probably do another installment of this in the future, but for now, as always people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.